Well, I believe what I said was there were no significant capital costs. There's considerably less of those costs than come from the other agencies. That was my intention, at least.
Okay, but let's make sure that we're clear on it. It's an additional $103,000 that would be capital costs for next year, so we'd have to add that to the bottom line on either one of the options. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and I probably should have started out, thank you for your service to this community. Well, and that's what we've been dealing with in this community. It's pretty incredible where I don't think the chief would say at one point, was I ever disrespectful to him? Was I anything other than complimentary to him and to your department? So, well.
Excuse me, Mr. Anderson. I will not tolerate any noise from the audience. If you weren't here at the beginning, I talked about that, and if you don't cease and desist, you will be escorted out of the room. Go ahead.
Well.
My name is Paul Doty, 31-year resident, 18-year volunteer for the city in service to the Yorba Linda community. Mayor, members of the City Council, staff, and all those present this evening. Number one, thank you for an excellent presentation to Anaheim, Brea, and the sheriffs. I think all of you presented a very clear picture of what you have to offer to our city. And for an observer sitting in the background watching this, I appreciate the hard work and I respect it. I have reviewed the RFP and the 3 proposals for a police contract for the city of Yorba Linda. It is my opinion that the best option for the next 5 years is to accept the proposal from Brea and enter into contract negotiation stage of the process. My conclusions are based on cost-benefit analysis that included startup costs, crossover, and a learning curve associated with a change to either Anaheim PD or the Orange County Sheriffs. The RFP process was an appropriate method of exercising fiscal responsibility in the contract review process. However, cost does not trump public safety, security, and a commitment to the residents of Yorba Linda that we have seen over the last 40-plus years. The only factor to be considered over and above safety, security, and peace of mind is the track record, the proven track record that Brea has offered this city. Efficient, effective, and cost-appropriate service is everyone's goal. We also evaluate the intangibles, which include past performance, current status, loyalty to citizen and community alike. When all the factors, including cost, are weighed on an unbiased scale, the obvious decision for me is to negotiate a 5-year contract with the City of Brea. During contract negotiations, I would strongly suggest the incorporation of quarterly reports on performance, annual budgets, and budget tracking, and a biannual review that includes public input with respect to our police service and its relationship with the community. I urge this council to listen to all of the citizens of Yorba Linda, hear any and all of their input, and then make a determination. Accept the proposal from Brea and negotiate an efficient and effective contract that will provide the best quality at the most effective price. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doty. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Jim Pellegrino. I've been a resident of Yorba Linda for 10 years. I spoke at the council meeting back in November and appreciate you allowing me to speak again. I, for one, appreciate that you're closely monitoring how our taxpayer dollars are being spent. It's your fiduciary responsibility to do so. I would also like to thank the men and women of the Brea, Orange County Sheriff, and Anaheim Police Departments who put their lives on the line for us every day. You all do a fantastic job. 10 years ago, I moved my family from Whittier to Yorba Linda. I moved my family not because the cost of living was cheaper in Yorba Linda, quite the opposite as you all well know, but more so because Yorba Linda was a much safer city to raise a family in. I didn't mind paying a little more money for police services if it meant that my family would be in a safer environment. It's my understanding that each of you is very satisfied with the services provided by the Brea Police Department. My feeling is that the residents of Yorba Linda are also very satisfied. It's also my understanding that the main reason why this vote has surfaced is not because of poor service, but is driven by potential cost savings. If this is the case, I have many concerns that I'd like to voice. I'm going to focus just strictly on the Brea and the sheriff RFPs. My concern with the sheriff RFPs is that it doesn't appear to be an apples-to-apples comparison when compared to the services currently offered by Brea. An example of this is that the Brea RFP offers 27.5 patrol officers, while the sheriff's RFP offers 25. It also appears that many expenses were left out of the sheriff's RFP, such as the cost of police motorcycles, radios, and other expenses. My guess is that if this were an apples-to-apples comparison, and after true costs were captured, there'd be little to no savings at all. Another concern I have is that it's a fairly common practice for the sheriffs to increase their fees once they land a new contract. I obtained the following excerpt from an article written in the Orange County Register on April 6. The article states the following: Stanton, a city of about 38,000 people, has a budget problem. Sales tax revenue declined by $1.2 million, while fees to the Orange County Sheriff's Department for police services have risen by $1.7 million since 2008. The article goes on to say, what's interesting is why the Sheriff's Department is raising its fees. As Sheriff Lieutenant Jeff Pasalagua explained to the Register, the increase in fees is due to fund the sheriff retirement system. As a resident of Yorba Linda, this concerns me. As council members of Yorba Linda, you too should be concerned. It's your fiduciary responsibility to thoroughly review past tendencies and to weigh the what-ifs. What if the Sheriff's Department increases the rate in which it charges Yorba Linda for its police services? What if they increase it by 10 to 15% or $1.7 million like they did to the city of Stanton? You may declare that there are out clauses in the contract that would allow you to terminate the contract. This is true. However, on page 55 of the Sheriff RFP, it states that the city of Yorba Linda would be responsible for full recovery costs for items that have been amortized, such as buildings and other capital investments, if the contract is terminated before the end of the 5-year period. These capital items will cost Yorba Linda taxpayers over $1 million. In ending, I would encourage this council to consider the following. Conduct a risk versus reward analysis between the two RFPs. Ask yourselves the following questions. 1, are the cost savings proposed by the Sheriff's RFP accurate and realistic? 2, is the Sheriff RFP really an apples-to-apples comparison to the Brea RFP, and is there any real savings at all? 3, is it worth the risk of transitioning police services to the sheriffs, given their track record of increasing fees once a contract is landed? 4, police services were transitioned to the Sheriff's Department. Would the citizens of Yorba Linda be put at a greater financial risk should the contract be terminated prior to the end date? The city of Yorba Linda has a population of about 60,000. Assuming the Sheriff's RFP is accurate, which I don't believe it is, and the $1.3 million is recognized over the life of the 5-year deal, which really only comes to a savings about $250,000 annually.
Sir, could you wrap it up?
Yes.
You're out of time.
When extrapolating the savings over the 60,000 resident, the savings is only $4 per resident annually, or a whopping 1 cent per day. Are all the what-ifs that I pointed out worth 1 cent per day? Is the risk reward?
Okay, sir, you're out of time, so I'm going to ask you to stop.
Thank you. I only waited here since 4 o'clock this afternoon to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next speaker, Mrs. Burke.
Yes, Deborah Burks, 30-something-year resident of Yorba Linda. If we are so interested in saving money, could we please turn off the air conditioning? It's freezing in here. I had prepared remarks tonight. You all I've spoken many times. You all know how I feel about this. I support Brea. But as I listened to the proposals, some thoughts came to mind. And I kept hearing some words. I heard the word vast. I heard the words no cost. And I got to thinking about that. No cost. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Yes, maybe they're not going to charge us for those services, but they're being paid for. They're being paid for by every taxpayer in Orange County. They're being paid for by the 19 cities that aren't sheriff contract cities. So we are paying for the sheriff's department. That's why they have over 30 bureaus and divisions and task force and different components of their department. That's why they have 3,800 member department. They are vast, they are bureaucratic. They are probably fine people, I'm not saying that. But I don't think they suit Yorba Linda. We are a small community. We are not South County, we are North County. We have a different history. Brea knows our history. Brea has been here. They've been here through the development of this city. They know the history of the city. They know every square inch of this city. They know every business. They know every business owner. They know the schools, the parks. They know everything about our city. Why would we terminate that relationship for just a few cents a day? It makes no sense to me. I heard different agencies asked, would you pick up the officers from Brea? And they've all said yes. There is no need to do that. The officers are in place. They work for the city of Brea. They do the job on a daily basis. Why should they have to go to a different agency? Why are we even picking a different agency? We have what we need already in place. Then there was some talk about the contract. Now, if I recall this right, I think, Mayor Schwing, you're on your third term in the council, so you've been here for other contract negotiations. I think Mr. Anderson's been on the council since, 2006? So he's been here through contract negotiations. But yet, all of a sudden now, we're hearing complaints about the contracts. You've had opportunities to fix the problems that you're saying now exist before. But all of a sudden now we've been pushed into this controversial position. We've had agencies have to come here and make proposals because you're saying our contract has problems. But you could have fixed those problems a long time ago. These are accumulation of things that have developed over a 40-year period. So to suddenly hold Brea to this standard and blame them for the issues you don't like, I think we need to take a look at ourselves here. I just want to say one other thing. Not one council member campaigned on this issue when they ran. Out of all of the new council members on this dais, not one of you campaigned on this. So now the city is not allowed to vote on this. It's not going to be a referendum. It's just going to be you making the decision. Now the voters are going to hold you accountable. Now you may feel very safe because you're incumbents, and incumbents usually win elections. But that may not save you this time. There is an election coming in 2012. Just remember that. And the voters will be looking at this, they'll be thinking about this, they'll be talking about it, and people will be reminding them of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Anderson.
As the next speaker is coming up, I was not part of any contract negotiations. The contract was negotiated 2 years before it expired by a council that was elected in 2004 and 2002. Every question I ever asked, I was told that we had to wait until contract negotiations. I have questioned for a couple of years this indirect cost division, for example. No, you have to wait. You have to wait. Now is the time. Now we've been asking the questions. Just for clarification as to Mrs. Burke's comments.
Mrs. Stevens, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Schwing, council members, Yorba Linda staff, visiting staff, and the public. Nancy Stevens, 40-year resident in the northwest corner of Yorba Linda. To the best of my recollection, I have appeared before the Yorba Linda Council at every single meeting since that fateful November 1st, 2011 meeting, sharing what I believe to be factual with regard to the current police services issues, facts that I have researched and investigated on my own. It is my conclusion that the Brea Police Department best serves this community, even if it means that it might cost a bit more. There were some things that went on this weekend. I think I got the first email about 12:30 in the afternoon, and it was probably 6:30 before I left the computer that day in the evening. During these past 5.5 months, I have sent updating emails to those on my Yorba Linda contact list. Yes, I've directed those folks to the Yorba Linda Police website information section, as that seemed to have the best collection of links to find out information. Yes, I've encouraged people to write letters. Anytime that I have been offered an opinion on this issue, I have acknowledged it, that it was my opinion. If all of that makes me anti-sheriff and a Brea PD groupie, then so be it. I've done my homework and, in my opinion, made some valid conclusions. With any, and I say this about any public safety agency, there comes a certain amount of baggage. In no way do I say this to be disrespectful of any people involved. These agencies have a Police Officers Association, a POA, under some name attached to it, be it Timbuktu, POA, whatever. As I understand it, a POA negotiates with their employer, city and county, to attain certain benefits for their members. Additionally, they might support political issues or candidates. They might even support various organizations in town. I find it rather alarming for this city council to be considering a change in services from a police agency, Brea, with a POA membership of about 100 members, to an agency, Orange County Sheriff's, with a POA membership of well over 2,000 members. I've heard council members from the dais say that they wanted to be included in negotiations with the police department, which I believe Brea did address in their RFP. Can you imagine how it would just work out for our council to negotiate with a POA representing over 2,000 members? I know that just recently Brea did negotiate a new contract. They came out with some of the lowest pension programs in the county. That was already covered earlier. The simple question I have to ask, with absolutely no malice toward any agency, I think I said that already, didn't I? No, I didn't. Just which POA do you think would be the easiest to work with? That one with 100 members or the one with 2,000? In recent months in account, I realize that I've had the opportunity to meet at least 40 officers of the Brea PD, partly because I attended the Citizens Academy that finished up in April. Those officers were very professional, and I will admit that I asked some tough questions just because of what we were going through here. And many of them were knowing that their jobs were on the line and in the hands of this council. And they simply did not ever lose their composure nor say anything negative about the current situation over the issues that we're here tonight for. Additionally, I've had the opportunity to talk to a few sheriff's deputies, all of whom I have a great deal of respect. However, I lost that respect for the Orange County sheriffs as a whole, not those individuals that I have worked with. This past weekend, when I saw the letter that came out from their POA in response to the current conflict in Yorba Linda, that letter only served to prove to me that my original support is correctly directed. Brea PD is the best fit for Yorba Linda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stevens. Next speaker.
Greg Schultz, 16-year resident of Yorba Linda. I want to make an observation as I sat here through the whole evening, and I observed that the tone of the council's questions to the Anaheim and OCSD were rather patronizing, and that to the Brea PD were more like the Spanish Inquisition. I'm amazed that this issue has risen to this level of contention. The city can find money to spend all kinds of things to gain us little or nothing. For example, we spent over $500,000 on an RRM to come up with a concept for Town Center, after spending well over $100,000 on the Blue Ribbon Committee to find out basically the same thing. I've forgotten how many other town center studies we've paid for and how many historical home studies we've paid for, and for what. I realize this was primarily RDA money, but it's still taxpayer money that yielded no change. There
Mr.
are
Schultz,
so many.
would you focus your comments on the police issue and not
I
the
am.
town center?
It all ties together. There are so many uncertainties in these proposals that we don't really know if there is going to be a savings, but we do know that for over 40 years we have had excellent service from Brea. In fact, every study that's ever been done on this has concluded that the Brea PD is our best option. You said that you want to have more control. In a bureaucracy like the OCSD, where the county controller determines price, which the Board of Supervisors then has to approve before the sheriff can enter into an agreement, how could you possibly think you're going to have more control in negotiations? I remember a council member stating at a council meeting in February 2011 that she preferred supporting local groups or organizations, which is why she voted to turn the Janeway House project over to YLPF rather than Spectra. Well, guess what? Brea PD is our local police department. Yet now we are considering turning our police services over to a huge conglomerate that will never be able to provide the level of individualized services that we get from Brea PD. It is simply not possible because while Brea's PD's territories include only Brea and Yorba Linda, the OCSD covers nearly all of the South County, including 12 other contract cities. The sheriff has refused to commit to any officers spending any length of time in our neighborhoods because they can't. They are far too large, and their officers are frequently promoted or moved to other assignments. There is no way they will ever develop any ties to our community. I am deeply concerned about the tactics employed by the Sheriff's Union throughout this process. They have engaged in deceptive advertising, robocalls, as well as attack ads against the Brea PD and their supporters. They have already proven that they care nothing about the citizens over Yorba Linda. What's even more troubling is that their robocalls specifically name 3 of our council members as their supporters. This certainly appears as if at least 3 of you have made your decision ahead of time and are endorsing the sheriff. While this may not be a Brown Act violation, it certainly seems suspicious and definitely appears unethical. It also doesn't support true conservative values, which are for smaller government and less government control. The true conservative approach would be to select our smaller local police services where we have much more community involvement and much more local control over decisions. You all have said at one time that the Brea PD has done an excellent job. The cost of all agencies is so close that I have to ask, why fix what is not broken? The only prudent decision is to stick with the Brea PD. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Kathleen Pamikata. I'm a 50-year resident of the city of Yorba Linda. Brea Police Department has a 42-year track record of excellent service to our community. This community is demanding. They expect the best, and we have been given the best. I find it embarrassing that just a few short years ago, before the economic bubble burst, that City Council and others were bragging how we were upper middle class. Tonight I sit here and I felt embarrassed that the mayor of Brea had to explain why he gave his officers a 3% raise. I'm wondering if you all have not had raises this past few years. As a member of the community, I would like to remind all of you that not one of you ran on this platform for terminating the Brea Police Department. Yorba Linda residents should be allowed to vote on something like this. This is not up to a simple majority of the City Council. The move to terminate Brea is a council-manufactured crisis and was not undertaken at the request of the residents. Much has been made of our, quote, economic situation. The fact is the city of Yorba Linda is in a much healthier financial picture when compared to many of the cities. Yorba Linda has in its reserve funds 138% of its annual budget. I personally do not think this is the time to go for the cheapest cost. Take a look at the response time. My family has had, unfortunately, an emergency where the Brea PD was there in less than 2 minutes. Currently, their proven track record is 4 minutes and 22 seconds. The goal of the Orange County Sheriff's Department is 5 minutes. That's not a proven, that is their goal. Thank you for your time.
In answer to your comment, the city council salary was set at $500 a month in 1992 by state law when the city's population exceeded 50,000. It could have been increased by CPI annually. It has never been increased. It is still $500 a month.
Excuse me? What was that?
City, you asked about, you said, didn't we all have raises? The answer is no. City council salary has been $500 a month
I'm not
since
talking
1992.
about your raises as city council. I'm talking about in your professions.
All right.
That's my point.
Ms. Schultz.
Good evening, Julia Schultz. I'm going to preface this by saying I mean no disrespect to any of the agencies because I think you all do fine work. This is for my illustration to make my point. Keeping in mind that there are no guarantees for costs beyond the first year, I am not convinced that changing police services will save us any money at all. According to the city staff report, the sheriff's bid is roughly $61,000 less than Brea. That's the equivalent of 94 cents per person per year in savings, or half of 1%. In addition, both Brea and Anaheim presented fairly straightforward bids that spelled out their costs. In my opinion, the sheriff's bid was ambiguous and failed to include all the costs for which Yorba Linda would be responsible, which some were mentioned before, so I won't go into that. Also, since the scope of the Board of Supervisors audit was limited, there really is no way of knowing if the sheriff is currently recovering all costs, which if they're not, who do you think is going to end up paying the bill? We know what we're paying with Brea because we have a history with them. Let me put this another way, and here's an illustration, so please don't take it personally, anybody. Let's say you want to remodel your house. You've used a Brea company in the past, and so have all of your neighbors. They are a local independent company, and you've all found them to be prompt, courteous, and professional, and you all agree that they provide excellent quality service. But just to be sure, you decide that you want to get a few more bids, so you obtain a bid from the Anaheim company and the sheriff company. The Anaheim company seems a bit higher, but the sheriff company seems a lot lower. However, when you read the fine print, you discover that they are really going to only save you about 0.5%. As you further evaluate your decision, you learn that the sheriff company, which is a large conglomerate, has got some issues with lawsuits. You've heard numerous complaints that their jobs end up costing more than they bid, they're not as prompt with their work, and that they're hard to get a hold of. Now, I'm sure they're a fine company, but you're starting to feel you can't rely on the bid from the sheriff, and since you have no experience with them, you can't be sure that you can rely on the service of that company either. Being that this is your home, you decide it is not worth the risk to switch companies and on the slim chance that you might save 0.5%. In fact, no reasonable person would take that risk. So why would you consider taking that kind of a risk with our city? At our last council meeting, you heard about a study published in the Register that ranked smaller police agencies above larger agencies. Another study conducted by the American Society for Public Administration also concluded that communities are better served by smaller independent police agencies, citing the following reasons. Higher levels of output, less costly, the town officials are closer to operations of the police department, the officers have greater ties to the community because they often live in the community they serve, the residents are more likely to know several of their local police officers, the police are more accessible to citizens, the citizens usually have no trouble directly reaching their police chiefs, captains, detectives, etc. Conversely, in consolidated agencies such as the sheriff, the study found it was virtually impossible for citizens to have the direct access. When I was analyzing the bids, I contacted both the Brea PD and sheriff with questions. I received very quick and thorough responses every single time I contacted Brea PD. On the other hand, when I contacted the sheriff, I'm actually still waiting for my responses because I never got any. And unfortunately, this seems to be typical of larger agencies. They're just too big to be able to interact on the same personal level. While Anaheim is a good police department as well, their bid was higher. And I also feel that they are still too large to provide the same level of personalized service as Brea. It makes no sense to throw away the level of extraordinary personalized service that we have been enjoying and the strong relationship we've developed with the Brea PD over the past 42 years for another police department that has no ties to our community, has no experience in our community, and will most likely not save us money. And, in fact, they may even end up costing us more. I am not willing to give up the excellent service we receive from Brea PD, not for $61,000 and not even for $500,000, which, by the way, amounts to $7.71 per person per year. And quite frankly, you shouldn't be willing to give them up either. In fact, I'll go even further. For $1 million, I don't want to give them up because that's $14 a year, $15 a year. Big deal. I would really appreciate it if you renew our contract with Brea because they've done excellent by us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. Mr. Anderson, do you have a comment?
I do. Mr. Goss, can you grab your mic, please, wherever it is? It has been, before it gets repeated over and over and over about this just being a $61,000 savings, the matrix that you put together with that figure is the first year startup cost. Is that correct?
Yeah, that includes a lot of the startup costs, and I think the more appropriate cost would be what was projected for the second year.
All right.
And that was a difference of about $384,000. But as I also pointed out, that if the 55 radios were amortized over 5 years, and if the purchase of the 3 motorcycles were done on a lease purchase basis, then that would reduce or increase the savings by about another $180,000 a year.
All right. In your narrative, and apparently people didn't read the narrative, you indicate, as you just said, $340,000 in year 2 on. Mm-hmm. So it's not a $60,000 savings like people are thinking from the matrix.
Yeah, that's just from 24J, line 24J of the matrix, and it's pointed out that there is additional cost, actually for both Brea and the Sheriff's Department, but more cost for the Sheriff's Department. So in the second year, as those costs drop off, there would be a greater differential.
All right, and then in the narrative you indicate that's $339,631.
Yeah, actually I recalculated, and it's actually about $384,000.
84,000?
384, yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Mr. Winder, go ahead.
Thank you. I think it might be best to progress through this and be polite to the audience. If we take notes about the responses to some of these questions and handle them at the end. I believe the city attorney would probably opine that this is the public's time to talk, not ours.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
I've asked for no applause tonight. I mean that.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Anderson.
Pandering to the audience won't get us anywhere, number one. And number two, all I was trying to do is point out a misconception before it gets repeated over and over and over again, as it has been by certain people in the community, that this is merely a savings of $60,000. And respectfully to my colleague, I think we have the right to point out something like that, and I'm certainly going to do it.
Mr. Mayor, I'm in favor of that as well. I think that we're all here to learn and make sure the information is correct, not just for the audience, but for everyone on the council. So I believe we should correct any misstatements or ask the questions as they come up.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Gene Hernandez, and I'm a 28-year resident of Yorba Linda. I recognize that strong feelings are being expressed tonight. Such is the nature of police work. I think it's the only job I know people pay you to do, then intensely dislike you for doing it. I'd hope that reasonable people, however, can reasonably disagree and recognize that we all want what's best for our community. I've spent the last 35 years of my working career as a police officer in 3 municipal police agencies, 2 in Orange County, 1 in San Bernardino County. I've spent the last 9 years as chief of police. I have no ties with any of these agencies bidding here tonight, but I've worked with all 3 at one time or another. I choose to live in Yorba Linda and raise my family here because of the quality of life we enjoy. All 3 of my children and my 4 grandchildren all live in Yorba Linda. This is our home by choice. The main cornerstone of that quality is our policing services provided by the Brea Police Department. I didn't choose Yorba Linda because it was the cheapest place to live, because I consider it the safest place to live. By any standards of fiscal conservancy, that does not justify ending a 42-year relationship with an agency that's provided excellent police services. Public safety is the #1 job of city government, And yes, it will be the largest piece of the budget. That is true of virtually all city budgets. Cost of those services is only one consideration in selecting our law enforcement partner. Each of you is our elected official, and I'm hoping you're keeping an open mind to our comments. I'm hard-pressed in that belief, however, when I've received a call from the Sheriff's Union stating that the three of you have already made up your minds to support their bid. Please tell me this is not an exercise in futility. The stakes are too high. The ultimate question remains, which organization can provide the best police service? Please don't make the mistake of thinking that all police agencies are the same. They are not. Police and sheriff's agencies have their own personalities and culture, just like people. We have to find the one that fits our community. I believe we've done that. I support the Brea Police Department as our police agency of choice. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, Mrs. Gillespie.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, will the group of C21 through C30 please meet back in the lobby, go through the back doors and to your left? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Betty Gillespie, and I've lived here since '71. And through my experience with the Brea Police Department, they've always been responsive. They've always been involved in our community. When I was chosen to head up our CERT team in the beginning, they were very supportive of us. They not only gave us training when we asked for it, we could go to them with questions. They invited us to their CAP meetings so we could see how they all worked and supported our community. I raised 5 kids in this community, and I have to tell you, they've always been supportive. I have come from LA County, where I can tell you you do not get that level of service. I'm really sad to see that we're going to take a known entity and maybe get rid of them to take on another entity that has a bad reputation for dishonesty within their services, for their non-responsiveness to our unincorporated area that's local. So I want you to really think hard about when you decide if we are going to get rid of our Brea Police Department, we'll never be able to afford to get them back, and we will be doing a disservice to our city.
Thank you. Mr. Gillespie.
Good evening, Greg Gillespie, 42-year resident of Yorba Linda. Yorba Linda has a motto, Land of Gracious Living. Why do you think we've been able to keep that motto for the 42 years I've been here? Primarily because we've had excellent police services. With the bad police services, we never would have had that motto. We couldn't say it because it wouldn't be the truth. I've heard a lot of things here tonight that I just can't go along with and agree with. You're looking at 5 years, you keep talking about the second year savings and all that, and modeling everything up with a lot of confusing numbers. Let's talk about the 6th year. Did that one ever dawn on you? How many cities have gone into contracts, and on that 6th year, it went way up? Remember, when that goes way up, you're not going to go back. You're stuck. A decision 3 of you people made, we're going to be stuck with. That's a big weight on your shoulders to carry. Please don't make a mistake. If what we're hearing is true, the 3 of you members have already given your support to Orange County sheriffs or to anybody. Shame on you. That's not the way elected officials should conduct themselves. When I came here tonight, I walked up and down the line. These yellow Brea Yes pins, I'd say 80% of the people out there standing in that line to get in were wearing those pins. What does that tell you? You have a huge support in this city for Brea PD. If you give us something else, I don't think the people are going to really appreciate it and really respect you like you would like us to. Particularly being on election year, I think that's an absolute insane thing to do, to upset the apple cart. It's not broken. Why are we trying to fix it? A lot of these figures that you're hearing are nothing but confusion, a lot of smoke screens. And I just don't appreciate the kind of negative advertising that this is created in this city. I got an email the other day of protect our children. You know where it came from. They're your friends. They're your supporters. They're the people that put that garbage out, and I say garbage because that's what it is. There has never, ever been a question that our children have been safe in this city. I've raised 5 children here, up to adults. They all have children now. Never once did I fear for their safety in this city. For somebody to put out a scare tactic campaign like that, I consider the source, and those are the people that support you. I'm sorry for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gillespie. Next speaker, thank you.
Pardon me, Mr. Mayor, if we could have the next group, D31 through 40, meet out in the lobby. Thank you.
Also, could you twist that microphone so it's a little directional so it's aiming right at you, if you would, as opposed to kind of up your forehead. Good, thank you.
There we go. Gabriella Rollins, 31-year resident. I think all 3 agencies did a wonderful job with their presentations. There were a lot of questions and concerns, but like so many people, I won't go on too long, but one of the reasons we moved to Yorba Linda was because of the safety factor. Always a very, very safe place to raise a family, and I think one of the main reasons is because we had Brea PD. I've had some dealings with them personally, and it's always been professional and positive. Absolutely no complaints. As a matter of fact, there's another issue I'm dealing with, and feel very, very confident that Brea PD can solve the problems that exist. So I feel bigger is not always better. I think the Sheriff's Department does a phenomenal job, but it's like layer upon layer upon layer of, it is a huge bureaucracy that's been said before. And it is still paid for by taxpayer. No matter how you look at it, we pay one way or the other, but we're paying. And so I think the best choice for me personally and for a lot of people would be to stay with Brea PD. Contracts are negotiable. And if there's something in the contract that you don't like or something that you feel is too high in price, negotiate with them. It seems like they're very willing to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rollins. Mrs. Horton.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to say I have respect for all police and first responder officers. It doesn't matter what agency you're from, you work hard, and you should be acknowledged for that. But I believe for Yorba Linda, our relationship with Brea PD should be preserved. First of all, I'd just like to make a couple comments about some of the stuff I've heard before I had my little written thing. I think we received a very political, polite answer to the question of the audit. The question was about the audit as far as the unfunded liability. The polite political answer is that they followed the supervisor's ordinance. So if it's not in the ordinance, then of course it must not have to be tracked and audited, and so you don't have to account for $3.7 billion of an unfunded liability. $3.7 billion. Sheriff's has a portion of that. We all will be paying that bill, or our children, or our grandchildren. Portions of Yorba Linda are already patrolled by the sheriff. One of the areas under jurisdiction is constantly having problems with drugs, fights, domestic violence, and now the cost savings is to pull them into Yorba Linda policing using my tax dollars to do that? I don't think so. That is a bad mistake. I don't want my tax dollars funding a group of people that don't want to be a part of my city. I want to ask the sheriff, where is the homicide office? I know the answer, it's in Santa Ana. We don't get a lot of those. But where is the regional traffic office? I got traffic tickets. Aliso Viejo. Not in Yorba Linda, not in Santa Ana, not in Fullerton, not in Brea. Aliso Viejo. Good luck on that one. There's a difference of $384,000 apparently. I don't agree with that, and I'll tell you why in a minute, between Brea and the sheriff's adjusted bids year 2. The question is what $5.91 a year per resident worth less staffing ratios as proposed by the Sheriff Department, less traffic officers, less detectives, less patrols left in our community while the agency is responding to a larger emergency elsewhere? With Brea, we get more. I disagree with the consultant because the biggest add-on for the Brea or for sheriff was the $1.4 million for vehicles. The sheriff said the life of the vehicle is 2 to 5 years. They want to amortize it over 5 years. So guess what? At the end of 5 years, when we're paying off the vehicles that we purchased in year one, we're going to be double dipping, and now we're going to be paying for 2 sets of vehicles and maybe even a third set. There are other undefined and extra costs in the sheriff proposal. What I don't understand is why the majority didn't grill the sheriff like you grilled and was disrespectful to Brea. That's right, one of you is intrinsically involved with the sheriff, and you have 2 followers up there. Larger is not always better. With a sheriff contract, we lose the ability for effective local control. With Brea, we have a larger stake of their budget and therefore more influence. With the sheriff, we're about 1% of their budget. We will have little effect or voice on this agency. Police chief or not, it's only another layer in the larger bureaucratic agency that's political in nature. Larger is not always better. Brea's contract has offered a seat at the table during labor negotiations, a joint management committee with Brea in the direction of Brea PD Department, an opportunity to select the city liaison and the next police chief. This is not available with the sheriff proposal. Larger is not always better. Many of the sheriff's perks listed by consultants are already available for us. We pay for it already. Larger is not always better. I'm very concerned with the actions of the sheriff's union in this local issue. Robocalls, emails, signs in the community, walking precincts, and driving our community, and challenging people who support Brea PD just to gain the contract. Now just imagine them receiving this contract and a future council changing their mind and they want to get rid of the sheriff because of their dislike. What would they do to retain control? What would they do to protect council members who support their control? This is the largest union in Orange County, and like I said, larger is not always better for our community. I would rather keep local control, smaller is better, and I support Brea PD for the police services in Yorba Linda. Now, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. This contract decision should not be made tonight. You should hold the town hall meetings to make sure you have elicited input from as many of the community as possible. Many people think this is a vote on the ballot. It is now, what time is it? 12:40, and you haven't even gotten through Group B yet. This is a sin. You guys will make this decision at 4 in the morning when most of us are asleep. I hope not.
Thank you, Mrs. Horton. Ms. Nelson.
Good evening. My name is Pat Nelson, and I've lived in Yorba Linda since 1976. And when I first bought my house in 79, I lived in a pocket that was not Brea PD, it was the sheriff's. It took them a long time to get out to me when I had a problem. I'd like to comment that this is a very complex issue that is emotional as well as monetary. The final decision may irrevocably change Yorba Linda, so good judgment must prevail. I got a very long robocall yesterday congratulating 3 members of council by name as well as YLRRR for being physically responsible in pursuing RFPs for police service. After I stopped laughing at the mistake of substituting physically for fiscally twice, I realized that there is, in fact, a bit of truth in that error. It really is the crux of the matter for me, the physical connection Yorba Linda has with the Brea Police Department. This connection is geographical, historical, and personal, and should not be discarded lightly. In their proposal, Brea PD has done much to address the issues council, this one and previous, have raised over the last several years. With Brea, you know where every dime has gone, and you have 40 years of paperwork to prove it. That bodes well for their new proposal numbers. Any other agency's proposal would be a new relationship for us, with no history and no proof that they are correct about their cost estimations. Who's to say that a year or two down the road, the numbers suddenly don't work for them anymore? Because, you know, they have to make costs. That's what we keep getting told. They can't subsidize. So that means if they're not making their cost recovery, then we're going to get hit with the bill. Because several cities that contract with OCSD have seen increases, and you can't guarantee that we won't be one of them. Your own consultant suggests that you check with other cities to see how their budgets have changed, the contract cities I'm talking about. And of course, the final say lies with the Orange County supervisors, which does not give us much of a seat at the bargaining table. I'm sure you understand that. As for service, which agency do you think we would get the best service from? The one where we're roughly half the budget, or the one where less than 2% of the budget? The one that's right next door, knows our city, and has tailored a program for us, or the one that will have to learn everything about us from scratch? In an emergency, Yorba Linda officers can be pulled either to Brea, if we're with Brea, or to anywhere in the whole county, because that's where the sheriffs are. Which is better for us? The analysis from consultants you have contracted with to study this issue over the last several years has always concluded that Brea PD is the best option for us, and we are not overpaying for the service. We're paying a lot, but we're not overpaying. So whether you use year 1 or year 2, the $1 a year per person or $5.91 per person is still not a lot of money. And the elephant in the room is the union issue. Fiscal conservatives know that unions can be the reason public services come at such a high cost. Whose union do you think you can have more influence with, Brea PD or OCSD, which is 20 times larger? 20 times. Talk about a little fish in a great big sea. And finally, I too am having a very hard time determining if this council is indeed approaching this from an impartial place. It is one thing to lobby for a cause that is on a ballot, since the public would ultimately decide that issue. I can even live with, albeit grudgingly, councilpersons making their feelings known at council meetings. However, I am deeply concerned when councilpersons indicate how they will vote when speaking at a public event and or sending emails and or have their names connected to one entity via robocalls before the public has even had their say. This is just outright wrong. On this issue, I do not get to vote. Only you get to vote. So you should not pick a side before you hear from us. Police service is not an appropriate vehicle for balancing our budget. Fiscal responsibility does not trump public safety. Look at this room and remember what it looked like at 6 o'clock. It is filled with folks who want to speak or did before they had to go home and go to bed. It is also filled with folks who want to increase their numbers by adding us to their list of cities. That's what contract cities mean to a big department, more customers. It's also filled with our neighbors who could lose their jobs if you personally think that from year 2, $16.70 per household is too big a price to pay. You could not have divided this city any more if you had tried.
Thank you, Mrs. Nelson. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, and colleagues. Peter Mitchell, a proud resident of Yorba Linda, and I also would like to thank all 3 agencies for their very outstanding proposals and very professionalisms tonight. In my role in a professional capacity, I think I could offer some observations. A lot of opinion is very emotional tonight, which is understandable, and some things are very inaccurate and hateful. As the executive director of the Orange County Coalition of Police and Sheriffs, I have a very solemn responsibility, and I work with almost all the agencies in Orange County. I also do a considerable amount of work statewide, including the California Statewide Law Enforcement Association, all 7,000 members of California personnel in the DOJ and other offices, the Men and Women of San Jose Police Officers Association, the 10,000 men and women of the LA Police Department, LAPPL, La Habra, Fullerton, Pomona, Redland, Santa Ana, Costa Mesa, Irvine, Laguna, Anaheim, AOCDS, CCPOA, Carlsbad, Newport, and et cetera. Let me do point out some observations. Number one, I would like to not fault, and I want to thank the Brea rank and file POA and the men and women have done a very good job over the years. Obviously, this position that is tonight is not their fault. I think, obviously, I've heard some good comments from the Brea City Manager and others. They do wish they would have done some things better over time, and that is very evident. The proposals from Anaheim Police Department were outstanding, and even more so was the Orange County Sheriff's Department. They clearly were best on services and best on costs, and it is not $60,000 cost. I heard a figure almost $6 million over the life of the contract, and I was very impressed with the sheriff combining other potential cost savings in the islands for an additional large savings per year. Those are real dollars. No, Yorba Linda may not be going broke, but Yorba Linda does have a budget deficit, and it's very wise of you to have this forum to address that, because as a very large homeowner in town and somebody that loves this community, nobody wants to have more taxes or fees, and we do love this community, and we want it all. We want a lot of services, and we want low taxes and fees, so we have to do things better and cleaner. Next, I think that the Orange County Sheriff's Department proposal was very comprehensive, and I don't think it's very fair when I drive around and as an expert in law enforcement and I see signs that say, is this really a risk worth taking? There is no risk with the Orange County Sheriff's Department. There are men and women that would just as admirably as Anaheim and Brea lay their lives down on the line to protect all of you. Their response time is superb. Their resources are unmatched. If we do have a Tier 1 crime or something, you will see hundreds of deputies be summoned here by a very local police force that is centralized with ultimate customer service and get it done fast and quicker. With all due respect, Brea does not have those resources, and there was a significant difference in those proposals offered tonight. Much more sophisticated by Orange County Sheriff's Department and Anaheim Police Department. OCSD was clearly better, hands down, by cost and service. Isn't it nice that we get something now that is not just better by a wide margin, but also cheaper? As Yorba Linda residents, we do love Brea. I used to live in Brea. But the fact of the matter is, this is called the Yorba Linda City Council, and Yorba Linda needs to look out for its actions, because if you don't, who will? You are elected to make the tough call and not to put everything on the ballot, because that's what Sacramento does, and they're not incredibly effective by government by initiative process these days. You need to hire the best in Yorba Linda and save, and thank you for this process. We are $2 or $3 million in the hole, and that is concerning, and it will only get better. And also, as somebody who does work with the Fullerton police officers in La Habra, I can assure you there's not going to ultimately be a joint services with those 4 agencies. Those people want their independence, and we will fight that, because we don't want to get in a morass with other agencies. Orange County Sheriff's Department is a much different situation. They are light years ahead on techniques and services. People that are saying things that are hurtful, I understand it's emotional, but it's not relevant. Those comments are not poignant. You would have every single person here in green, just as you would in blue, get it done better and cheaper and put their lives on the line. There also is no unfunded pension liability, period, with OCSD. And OCSD is very actuarial sound. CalPERS is having trouble, and it will heal over time, but it will take time. Next, I believe ultimately, just in close, because there's too many other comments and there's some hurtful feelings, I commend you for doing a tough decision, because it's never easy to lead. And I know a lot of people, there's some divisions in town on other issues. But I think, Mr. Mayor and Council, on the decision of police services, it is clear. You did an open process. People had a chance. And what do? Continue it over 4 nights. Thank you for doing it. I strongly urge a yes vote on Orange County Sheriff's Department. I'm sorry if you have to hear some of these insults, but welcome to Yorba Linda. You'll get used to it after a while, and hopefully if you're selected, your skin will get thicker. I thank Brea also for their service, and if your Orange County Sheriff's Department is selected, I heard the sheriff say that those people would keep their jobs. Those would be nice to keep those people in the department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Next speaker, please.
Mayor, Council, my name is Kim Van Tilborg, and I've been a resident of Yorba Linda for 26 years. I've read the proposals and saw the presentations tonight, and there was no mention of how communications and records is going to be handled. Where will the police reports and the traffic collision reports be held? Are they going to be held in Santa Ana if we go to the Sheriff's Department and Yorba Linda residents have to travel to Santa Ana? Or if we go with Anaheim, will we have to travel to Anaheim to pick up the reports? As it stands now, when you call 911, you have 6 chances of getting an operator or a dispatcher at Brea. How many lines will be allotted through the Sheriff's Department or Anaheim PD? What is the cost, or has it been figured in on transitioning those lines to Loma Ridge or to Anaheim Police Department? And I have to challenge the captain who states that for a priority 1 call, that it's a 5-minute response from the call to the officer or the deputy coming to your door. I have a report, it's a PSAP report that was for the year 2011. It shows the monthly average answer times for 911s. This report was drafted by Delia Kraft, who is the OCSD Supervising Communications Coordinator. For the Orange County Sheriffs, the average monthly time to answer a 911 line is 17 minutes and 3 seconds. Yes. For Anaheim PD, it's 5 minutes and 5 seconds. For Brea PD, it's 1 minute, 8 seconds. I am a dispatcher. I am not affiliated with any of the 3 agencies here. When you're having a heart attack and you're trying to get the sheriff's department, how long do you think you'll survive waiting to be answered in 17 minutes and 3 seconds? I ask you, the council and the citizens of Yorba Linda, what is more important, saving a buck or saving a life?
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council. My name is Tom Dominguez, and I am a Yorba Linda resident. I'd like to commend you for taking the time and making the effort to analyze the police services contract with the various agencies that are here today, with the Sheriff's Department, the City of Anaheim, and the Brea Police Department. It makes me proud as a Yorba Linda citizen to know that the City Council is fully analyzing what's going on in our city, especially when it comes to the finances of our town. With the economy being the way it is and the economic situation as troubling as it is, we have to take a deep look on how we do business and how the city delivers its services that it's responsible for to the community we serve. Like I said, I live in this town. I love living in this town. It's a great city to live in. I'm raising my 3 kids in the city. They attend public schools here in Yorba Linda. My wife's here in support of what I do. And I'm proud to say that I'm very happy and I'm very proud to be a resident of the city. As far as my employment goes, I do work at the Sheriff's Department. I think I'm the first peace officer to stand up here. I didn't hear the first couple because I was in the back, but I believe I'm the first one to stand up here that's a peace officer. I do work at the Sheriff's Department. This is my boss over here, Sandra Hutchins. I've been employed at the Sheriff. Yesterday was, or 2 days ago, because it's after midnight, was my 26-year anniversary at the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department has been very good to me. I'm very proud to be a member of that department. And one of the biggest reason why I'm here today is to let you know that I'm very familiar, obviously because of my experience at the Sheriff's Department, the types of services the department delivers to the citizens. In particular, its contract city partners. The cities, as you saw from the president, the services that the city or the Sheriff's Department provides are by far second to none. They're extremely comprehensive. They're extremely specialized. And there's not an agency, and I say this with all due respect to my friends from Anaheim in particular, they're second to none. And the part of the reason why it's important that we take a look at what's going on, because I think it's important for every taxpayer in this county who lives in this county deserves to have the same types of services that our contract city partners in South County and in Stanton and in Villa Park and in the unincorporated areas enjoy. We deserve that. We deserve that as citizens of this county to get the best services at the best price possible. That's imperative. And I hope as you're deliberating this evening and you're discussing the issues that have been brought before you, that you take that into consideration. We all deserve that. Every one of these citizens, even the ones who are speaking in favor of opposite of my position, they deserve the best and most comprehensive services that government can provide. That's your responsibility. That's your responsibility. And I understand, I get the loyalty that a lot of the speakers have to their agency. I respect that. I have nothing but respect for that. But that's not why we're here. We're here because it takes money, it takes tax dollars to deliver the services that each of us deserve. My current assignment is as the president of the Association of Orange County Deputy Sheriffs. That's what I do. I'm a full-time union president. And I've heard some remarks from some of the speakers. When they say the word union, it comes out in a kind of a real mean, sarcastic way. But the men and women who wear that badge, who drive those patrol cars, and I'm not just talking about the deputy sheriffs. I'm talking about the Brea police officers. I'm talking about the Anaheim police officers. I'm talking about the highway patrolmen and all these cops that you see driving around the community. They're union members. They live in our community. They send their kids to schools in our community. They pay taxes in our community. They buy their groceries in our community. They're police officers, and they're just trying to get by. And a little message I can share with my brothers from the Brea Police Officers Association. What's happening here is not an indictment on what you guys are doing and what you guys are about. This
Sir,
comes down to the management.
Would you direct your comments to the council, please?
And I'll direct my comments to the council. It's important that these officers understand that what's going on here is a result of what's happening on the management level at their city. They're not responsible for it. It's not an indictment for them. These guys are out there putting their lives on the line and doing the job. Thank you for allowing me to speak these few minutes. God bless you for doing what you're doing, and hopefully you guys will make a good decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Susan Janowitz. I too would like to thank the three agencies for providing the proposal.
Get your name and city residence, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, Susan Janowitz. I'm a 17-year resident of Yorba Linda. And as I was saying, I would just like to thank the three agencies for submitting their proposals. I know it's a very complicated process. It's a very complicated process in reviewing the proposals. I'd like to first talk about myself, 17-year resident. I'm a parent of three fabulous kids in high school, middle school, as well as elementary school. I'm a businesswoman who's been working in the city for over 15 years. I'm a sports mom out on the fields here in Yorba Linda. I volunteer my time here in Yorba Linda, as well as I'm a consumer. I do most of my shopping here in Yorba Linda. So I feel like I have a pulse of what's going on within the city. And to be honest with you, I have not heard concerns about Brea Police. I have not heard concerns about the financial aspect of the police contract, and I just have not heard the concerns about that. I appreciate the fact that the City Council is reviewing proposals. I've had an opportunity to review the proposals, to review the matrix. There are definitely areas of negotiation. And I would encourage the council to make a selection of a proposal this evening. My vote would be for Brea. And to begin those contract negotiations, I have my faith in you as city council members, as the city manager, as the city attorney with the Brea Police Department, that you'll be able to sit in a room and negotiate, not in a venue like this with the negotiations, but in a quiet room to negotiate privately on behalf of the citizens of Yorba Linda. And I would hope that Brea would be sound in their judgment and understand what the city's going through financially right now, as so many cities throughout California are. And I would hope that they would look at it wanting a long-term relationship with the city so that both parties would be able to benefit from this long-term relationship. I would like to talk to you just briefly about my own experience. I manage the East Lake Village Community Association. I've been there for over 15 years, and my relationship with the Brea PD consists of approximately 15 years. I have been, from the very beginning, been building on that relationship. They've been very involved in the community. It's over 2,200 homes. We have over 9,000 residents. It's involved most recently. We've been hosting the CERT classes at our facility. We've utilized their volunteers in police services, their VIPs. We most recently, this last year, have started community watch programs, and we've had the wonderful assistance of their crime analyst. Through the crime analyst, we've also received newsletter articles that we're able to publish to our community members. We're also receiving crime bulletins that we're able to publish to our community residents as well, in addition to flyers. The police have been very responsive to the community. They've been very responsive to my communications with them. We've had no hesitation in contacting them for really anything. We are concerned, I am concerned with regards to a change and what changes that would bring to not just Eastlake, but the entire community. I know change is always very difficult, but I don't want to see a change that would result in a quality of service change. We've had a great service from Brea, and I would like to encourage the council to continue working towards that goal of service, and I would just like to encourage the Brea PD to also work with you. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson has a question.
Susan, always good to see you. Are you here speaking on behalf of Eastlake Village?
No.
Just as a resident and your experiences in your job?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker, Mr. Rikel.
Excuse me, if we could have E41 through E50 and F51 through F60 meet back in the lobby, please. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm a little taller. Good morning, Mayor Schwing, members of council, city staff, and prestigious law enforcement agencies. My name is Ed Rikel, and I'm soon to be a 21-year resident in Yorba Linda. You've heard this saying before. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. For 42 years, and especially in the last 10 years, when our law enforcement costs were skyrocketing, past councils kept rubber stamping our police contract. Yet they complained about the cost of the contract. Their solution, or their insanity, in my opinion, was to cut or modify the level of service to residents. The result, the contract still kept going up and up and up, but the level of service went down. Now, I know what people may be thinking. In fact, I've heard it said tonight. It wasn't broke, Ed. We didn't need to fix it. Well, that may have been a fair argument in 2006 when Yorba Linda was rolling in dough. And the current contract was renewed a year early by an ambitious council. But it's pretty obvious from the testimony tonight that contract and the contract in 2002 were renewed with obviously very little oversight, as evidenced by things like an unfair split in indirect costs and this $1.7 million tab I'm now hearing about workers' compensation claims. How did that get thrown into the mix? So, I commend the City Council for doing what no council had the courage or the foresight to do in 42 years. You terminated a bad contract and initiated the competitive bidding process to take us to this day, where Yorba Linda residents are participating in the process of their council selecting our city's law enforcement agency. Now, if we could just get a food truck here and some coffee, I think we'd be in good shape. Can you do that? So I'm going to get right to my conclusion. I support the proposal of the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Here's why. Number one, I believe the sheriff's model is the closest thing to having our own police department. Their proposal includes our own police station and our own police chief, who will deal directly with our city council and city manager. You can't get any more local than that. Number two, I believe there will be more accountability with the sheriff. Both the sheriff and one of the sheriff's bosses, the 3rd District County Supervisor, our supervisor, are elected officials, and they answer to us. Yorba Linda residents cannot elect Brea or Anaheim City Council members who ultimately control their police departments. A voice at the bargaining table is not the same as a vote. Number three, the Sheriff's Department has an army of investigative teams, specialized units, and reserves that no other department can match. Although I have to say I'm very, very impressed with Anaheim. Number four, the price. You heard it said, and I'll reiterate it again, $6 million over 5 years. In conclusion, members of City Council, a former longtime council member once said that Yorba Linda is a world-class city and deserves a world-class city manager. We've got a world-class city manager. His name is Steve Rudimetkin. He's also a world-class Parks and Recs director. Now Yorba Linda deserves a world-class police department. You have a very tough decision on the community concerns this morning, but the choice is clear. The Orange County Sheriff's Department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rikel. Next speaker, please.
If we could please have G61 through G70 and H71 through H80 please meet in the lobby. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Steve Kaler. I've only been a resident for 13 years. I say that to begin with, and by the way, thank you all. I really appreciate this opportunity. It's a vital question, and the reason why I mention only 13 years is that, you know, at my age, I've dealt with a lot of organizations and a lot of different businesses, and it's not the name that's on it, it's the people that are in it. And that changes, and I hear people talking about 42 years, and I wonder what has changed, because I'm going to tell you some of my real life experiences and my family's. First, I'm going to start with a situation that happened recently. My son was back from his university where he's attending on an academic scholarship. He also, it's a D1 school, and he plays football there. Plus, he has a job. He doesn't have tattoos. He stays out of trouble. He's busy. He's always been that way. He was with some of his friends in my business car, went over to the 7-Eleven at Bastion Cherry and Imperial. It was early evening, and they were grabbing some iced teas and soft drinks and headed back to our home. They saw two Brea police vehicles there. Within 2 blocks of leaving there, they were pulled over. All 4 doors of the car were opened, and guns were drawn and pointed at all the occupants. They were made to get out and sit on the curb. My son asked, why was this going on? And was told by one of the officers, who then walked around the car and said, you're missing your front license plate. Then they said the music was too loud. The incident, you can only imagine what that did to my son, and how he's going to think about police in the future and his friends. I don't know. It was very humiliating, I know that, for him, because he's an upstanding kid. It's also very humiliating for my wife and I, because we pay over $13,000 a year in taxes here, and we're very glad to do that on our property. Another incident happened at our home where a yellow sports car that I had, I had a 3-day business meeting coming up where I had loaded my car with cameras and all of my materials for this presentation I had to do. And I got up very, very early in the middle of the night to leave. And I went out to my garage only to find that the door was open and the car was gone. I called the Brea Police. They were there. They came out. The police officer asked me how long the car was gone, and I said I didn't know. I said, but would you please put out a bulletin to all the police cars around, letting them know that there's a yellow Corvette riding around out there, and I need my stuff back. The officer told me he couldn't do that because it was against the rules. You can imagine how I pleaded with him to please do this. And I said, I even went to the extent of saying, if I was a fellow officer or a family member, do you think you would have done it then? His response to me was, I will place the report at the end of my duty day. The last incident that I want to talk about happened at my home not long ago. The Brea police officer showed up. I was at home, and I went to the front door, and he told me that there was a complaint placed by a neighbor that we were noisy. I know who the neighbor was. They're several doors away, but that's not really the issue for me. The issue was that the police officer, a young guy, came to the door upset. And I said to him at the beginning of the conversation, "Do you hear any noise?" And he was still very agitated with me. And then I said, "What is it that you're aggravated about?" And he said, "Well, there were young people out front of your home, and when I pulled up and told them to stop, they continued."
Okay, so your time
My
is up.
time's up.
Wrap up in a few seconds.
Yeah, I will wrap up very quickly. Basically, he was upset because these kids avoided him. There was no music going on. You couldn't hear anything. And then he told me that the neighbor if he goes back to that neighbor and they put another complaint, they can have me arrested.
Right.
I didn't think it was called for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Peterson.
Mayor, Council, my name is Kenneth Peterson, an 18-year resident. I live in Yorba Linda with my wife and 4 children. I'm here this morning to first of all thank you for having the courage to get an open bid process on this issue. It is reflective of a very difficult decision that was made, and certainly was a right decision. You must feel very vindicated in understanding that the bid that you received from Brea is significantly less than what the price was for last year. It is reflective of the fact that there's a value to an open evaluation, a fair evaluation of the facts. I'm just asking that you would stay the course. Be dispassionate about these facts. Take a look at these issues fairly, evaluate them fairly. I think that the major complaint that we were hearing before was a safety issue. Well, we have 3 excellent police agencies that I believe will take care of the safety issue. With regards to the best bang for the buck, if you will, the quality of our service for the cost of that, I think then what you would look at is, first of all, what are we getting? The cost is less for the Sheriff's Department. On the face of it, it's a better value. If you look at what we get from the Sheriff's Department for that, I think it's clear that you're getting something even better than what the other departments offer. You have a local, I think for the first time, a local police department, if you will, the equivalent for Yorba Linda. That's a huge leap in where we were before. I think that will give the potential and most likely a better response time. Certainly the opportunities for the citizens to meet with the police, etc. It's a local presence. All of that is absolutely marvelous. And again, I thank you for what you have done. Stay the course, and I think that you're going to make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is William Romsberg, resident. I actually have something quick to ask of the council. It's my career for the last 17 years has specialized in government technology and acquisition, specifically in purchasing. Our firm wrote the Department of Justice standards for acquisition. And on page 8 of the RFP, there are 5 RFP evaluation criteria that are listed. There's responsiveness to the RFP, experience and qualifications of the proposer, service approach, the service level offered, and finally price. And I noticed that Mr. Goss from Anderson, in a very similar RFP that was released a month prior to yours for the city of Morgan Hill, California, had a virtually identical RFP, except that in that RFP, like in all of the RFPs that we've ever issued, there are metrics attached to each of those 5 requirements. So, for example, in Morgan Hill, 10% went to the first for responsiveness, 20% was for experience and qualifications, 35% went to service, which is number 3 and 4, and then finally number 5, price, was 35%. So to me, again, having written hundreds of these for different agencies around the country, I was wondering if the council was going to publish the metrics associated with each of the 5 criteria that are in the RFP. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Steve Hawley. I'm a 24-year resident of Yorba Linda. Certainly a lot of facts and figures tonight, and certainly one that I want to call out deals with the unfunded pension liability for the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Based upon the Orange County Employees Retirement System, Section 4, page 57, The current unfunded liability is $3.7 billion. That is an increase from 2005 when it was $2.3 billion. And again, I think the Sheriff's Department, as with all agencies, were impacted by the market over those last few years. And in that regards, too, I'm in possession of a memorandum from this is from the County Executive Office. It was written by a gentleman by the name of Thomas Mock, the County Executive Officer, and it was addressed to Chairman Bill Campbell, Supervisor of the 3rd District. And I'm just going to read a few brief excerpts from this because I think it's important that the community understands. It says, on October 18, 2011, your board directed staff to evaluate the sheriff's law enforcement services contracts with cities to develop options to ensure that contract partners pay the current and future costs of the unfunded actuarial accrued liability associated with employee pensions. It continues, the cost recovery for law enforcement contracts is based on California Government Section 51350, which requires the county to charge all costs incurred in providing services to a contract city. These recoverable costs include both direct and indirect charges, including all elements of both pay and employee benefits. It goes on to state, there's certainly good information in here, but it says, cities have expressed concern that they have no input to the negotiation of benefit levels that will be required to pay under law enforcement services contracts. Since the county is an independent contractor, the contracting cities do not have a formal position in labor negotiation contracts. Okay? And it also is recommending, the County Executive Office recommends that the board to work with the sheriff to discuss with city managers of contract cities the option of establishing all new law enforcement contracts with 20-year contract terms. And the reason for the longer terms is to make sure that the unfunded liabilities are covered. So I just wanted to call that out. And again, it's not a matter of service. Certainly respect all law enforcement. They put their lives on the line and appreciate what they do. But based upon the consultant survey and the matrix, it really appears that, again, the first year it's about a $60,000 difference in cost. The second through the fifth year, which probably is more realistic, is somewhere between $250,000, $300,000. It was $384,000, but then Yorba Linda, Brea would actually have a reduction of $97,000. So again, we're talking about maybe 2 or 2.5% on a $10 million contract. So, you've done a good job. You really got a win out of this. By Brea's reduction, you've attained a gain of over $700,000. Is it worth it for another 1 or 2%? You see the passion, the feelings of the local community. Do you want to alienate the citizens of Yorba Linda, a large portion, for another 1 or 2%? I suggest that you take the gain that you have. And one final comment in closing, I certainly appreciate Councilman Anderson's forthright disclosure about his relationship and that he's consulted with counsel, and there isn't a conflict of interest. And yet, in private industry, that's not good enough. I'm a manager of a company, and we wouldn't be allowed to get away with that because it's also the appearance of a conflict of interest. I would not be able to participate in taking an action or making a decision just based upon that type of relationship. So again, I formally request the council that I do believe that Councilman Anderson should recuse himself from the decision-making process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Greetings, Mayor, Councilor. My name is Robin Nair. I am a current and on-again resident of Yorba Linda for the last 30 years. As a preface to my statement, I would like to say that I am agnostic as to who should get the contract for the police service Yorba Linda. I simply want to represent the voice of people who are seeking greater accountability from their police forces. One of the core issues surrounding the bidding process is that of government accountability. I don't think anybody would argue that governments, be they city, state, or federal, are accountable for the ways in which the productive wealth of its citizens, extracted through taxation, is spent. However, I would argue that when it comes to public safety and protection services, fiscal responsibility is not the only matter at hand when addressing the greater concerns of government accountability. In addition to reviewing the bottom line, we need to address the issue of whether or not the current service provider has been accountable to the people. By the very nature of law enforcement officers possess a grave responsibility in that they are endowed with legal monopoly on the initiation of force. We as the taxpayers are required by law to pay for these services does not diminish the degree to which we should be concerned about how that authority is wielded and the light of transparency in which it is exercised. I would just like to say that I think that because of earlier comments from another speaker, I think there are some legitimate grievances about the current Brea Police Department. I also would like to say that I question the Brea PD's deployment of high-powered assault rifles here in Yorba Linda and whether or not that is proportional use of force appropriate to our community. I would also like to bring up the issue of the unfunded liabilities in the pension programs, because this is a large looming specter over many communities in America, and it is not isolated to just Yorba Linda. And unfortunately, is the confluence of unfunded liabilities in both pension programs and government programs, and the confluence of many people coming in to retirement that may actually constitute a catalyst for another economic downturn. In light of these concerns, I would challenge all the building agencies and the council to address these concerns directly with the people and not behind closed doors. I also think that it's both the citizenry and elected officials honor and duty bound to see that legitimate attempts to pursue a redress of grievances not be met with undue hostility. I would also and regardless of the outcome of the city's council's decision, I would just like to say that many of us will endeavor to remain an informed citizenry, and we will be watching the activities of the police department no matter who is serving Yorba Linda. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
If we could please have I-81 through I-90 as well as J-91 through J-100 please return to the lobby.
Thank you, Council. My name is Glenn Pine. I'm a 12-year business owner as well as 12-year resident of Yorba Linda. I'd like to start out thanking the Chief of Police of Anaheim for giving the Brea PD such a wonderful endorsement when he said that the best officers to serve Yorba Linda were the ones currently serving Yorba Linda. I think he was spot on with that. It's been 42 years of service, and where does that go? It's almost as though it was a bad marriage, and one day you wake up and you've just grown apart. But really the blame is to be shared from both sides, as in a bad marriage. There was prior city councils, there's prior police chiefs who have all shared in this, prior managers. Everyone is to share in the blame. But what do we do at this point? Do we stand here at the premises and just throw the Brea Police Department over the cliff? I think it's time that we step back and negotiate. As a business owner, it's good to look at contracts. I've looked at contracts that I've had with lifelong friends and had to make that decision whether it was going to be something over dollars or relationships. But relationships are real, and they're priceless. And the relationship we've had with the Brea Police Department, I think you could say, is essentially priceless. It's easy to stand here and throw out statistics and numbers. Any good CPA can modify the numbers any way we want them to look. If the costs are too high, shift the numbers around. The profits are low, we just shift those numbers around too. I've heard conflicting stories tonight that seem to answer whatever benefited the person answering the question. Sheriff Hutchinson stated that the They wanted to be looking at 20-year contracts. Wouldn't be too good for the city. But when Mr. Anderson questioned her, she changed it to 5 years. That fits our matrix a little bit better. There are costs that other people have mentioned. We have the costs that Stanton incurred, $1.7 million over a 3-year period. Dana Point got hit with nearly $900,000 from one budget year to the next. Are those going to be surprises that we're going to be faced with in a year or 5 years? Are we going to get a surprise bill for that unfunded liability? $3.7 billion. Maybe, maybe not, but it seemed like Stanton got hit with that. The retirement fund, or the funds that Brea is facing, especially when it comes to the point, I should say, the funding for their workman's comp liabilities, those things that are incurred today that are liabilities that won't be settled for some time. So when we're beating up Brea over what those costs would be, those are the costs of doing business today that we've got to have set aside a contingent fund for and be liable to pay later. Those are our costs. Those were our officers that were injured, and that's something we're responsible for. And if Brea wants to make certain that we stick to that, our agreement that we're going to have to pay those costs, we should. The council should be reviewing these contracts, and they should be reviewing on a yearly basis. We shouldn't wait for it to get to a boiling point where we just suddenly pull the trigger and serve divorce papers. We should be a little more civilized and try to work it out on a year-to-year basis rather than some knee-jerk reaction. The prices that have been floated out there, $60,000, it's not bad. It's about the price of a cup of coffee for every household in this city. But if you bump it up to even $300,000 to $500,000, that's getting to be just maybe dinner at McDonald's once a year. I don't think it's hardly worth changing the police services we have and the relationship we have with those services. So we might save, I'll wrap it up here real quick, we might save $600,000 a year. We spent $2 million on signage for business owners in Savvy Ranch. I think we could have spent that on our police contract.
You're out of time, so please, thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.